The massive alien warships appeared near the moon without warning. 600 vessels hung in the darkness of space like sleeping giants. Each ship was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls gleamed with strange metals that caught and reflected the distant light of the sun. Inside the command center, deep beneath North American soil, Admiral Frank Turner stared at the displays showing the alien fleet. Around him, dozens of military personnel worked at their stations. Nobody spoke above a whisper. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. "How long until they reach Earth orbit?" Frank asked. His voice was steady despite the fear that gripped his heart. 12 hours at their current speed, replied Commander Lisa Grant. She stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the moving dots that represented each alien vessel. "They're not trying to hide. They want us to see them." Frank nodded slowly. He had known this day might come. For 50 years, humanity had been watching the stars and listening for signals. They had detected evidence of alien civilizations. Some seemed peaceful. Others definitely were not. This fleet belonged to the second category. The aliens called themselves the Valdran Empire. Human scientists had been tracking their conquest across nearby star systems for the past decade. They had watched helplessly as world after world fell to Valdran weapons. 400 planets had been conquered. Billions of beings had been enslaved or killed. Now it was Earth's turn. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of Sentinel-7, one of the 50 orbital defense platforms that circled Earth. Through the window of his station, he could see the alien fleet in the distance. They looked like dark clouds gathering before a storm. "Status report," Jake said to his crew. Lieutenant Maya Cooper checked her instruments. "All weapon systems are online and ready. Railguns are charged. Missile pods are loaded. Laser arrays are operational. We're ready for whatever comes." Jake looked at the young woman and saw the fear in her eyes. She was only 25 years old. Most of his crew were young. They had trained for combat their entire careers, but training was different from the real thing. Today they would find out if their preparation was enough. "Good work, Maya," he said, trying to sound confident. "Remember your training. We know what to do." Across Earth, similar conversations were happening in every military base. Colonel Ryan Hayes gathered his fighter squadron in the briefing room aboard the carrier Defiance. 50 pilots sat before him, their faces a mixture of excitement and terror. These men and women were the best humanity had to offer. They would be the first line of defense. "Listen up," Ryan said, his voice cutting through the nervous chatter. "We all know what's coming. The Valdrans think we're going to roll over and surrender. They think we're primitives who can't fight back. They're wrong." He paused, looking each pilot in the eye. "Today we show them what humans are made of. Today we prove that Earth is not an easy target. Stick to your training. Watch each other's backs, and we'll get through this together." The pilots nodded. Some looked more confident than others, but they all understood what was at stake. Their families were down on Earth, their friends, their homes, everything they loved. If they failed here, there would be nothing left to go back to. On the moon, Colonel Beth Palmer walked through the underground corridors of Armstrong Station. The base had been built decades ago as a research facility, but it had been converted into a military fortress. Hidden beneath the gray dust of the lunar surface were some of the most powerful weapons humanity had ever created. "How are the railguns?" Beth asked her chief engineer. "All systems green," he replied. "We can start firing as soon as the targets come in range. Each gun can fire once every 3 seconds. The Valdrans won't even see the shots coming until it's too late." Beth smiled grimly. "Good, make sure every shot counts. We won't get a second chance at this." The Valdran flagship was a massive vessel nearly 3 miles long. Inside its command center, Commander Krell studied the primitive planet below. He was a large creature standing over 7 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. His race had been conquering other worlds for 4 centuries. Earth would be just another easy victory. "Analysis of their defenses?" Krell asked his tactical officer. "Minimal," the officer replied. "They have approximately 200 spacecraft that could be considered military vessels. Primitive chemical rockets and basic energy weapons. Their orbital platforms are armed but poorly shielded. We estimate total conquest will take less than 1 planetary rotation." Krell laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. "These humans don't even have proper space travel yet. They're confined to their own planet and its moon." "This will be the easiest conquest of the year," his communications officer interrupted. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. Audio only. They wish to speak with us. Put it through, Krell ordered, still smiling. He expected begging, pleading, perhaps an offer of tribute. Every primitive species reacted the same way when confronted with Valdran might. The voice that came through the speakers was calm and measured. It belonged to Admiral Frank Turner. This is Admiral Turner of Earth's Unified Defense Force. We know who you are. We know what you've done to other worlds. We're giving you one warning. Turn your fleet around and leave this system immediately. Run now while you still can. This is your only chance. Silence filled the Valdran command center. Then Krell began to laugh again, louder this time. His officers joined in. The idea that these primitives were threatening them was hilarious. Tell them we reject their warning, Krell said, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes. Tell them they have one planetary rotation to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, we will destroy their cities one by one until they submit. This is the way of the Valdran Empire. Back on Earth, Frank Turner closed the communication channel. Around him, his staff waited for orders. They had all heard the Valdran response. The laughter had been insulting, but it was also expected. They didn't take the warning, Lisa said quietly. No, Frank agreed. They didn't, which means they're going to learn the hard way. He turned to his communications officer. Send the signal to all commands. Operation Thunderstrike is now active. All forces are weapons-free upon my command. The officer nodded and began transmitting the coded message. Across Earth, on the Moon, on Mars, and in dozens of hidden locations throughout the solar system, military personnel received the signal and began final preparations. The Valdrans had made a critical mistake. They had assumed that humanity's public broadcasts to the stars were accurate representations of their technology. They had assumed that what they could see was all that existed. They had assumed that a species confined to one star system must be primitive and weak. They were wrong on all counts. For 50 years, ever since humanity had first detected signs of hostile alien civilizations, they had been preparing. They had built weapons in secret. They had developed technology far beyond what they advertised. They had created a military force designed specifically to defeat enemies with superior numbers. The doctrine was simple. Let the enemy underestimate you. Let them think you're weak. Let them come close. Then hit them with everything you have before they realize their mistake. Jake Morrison watched as the Valdran fleet began moving toward Earth. They were taking their time, clearly not worried about any resistance. They flew in a loose formation, not even bothering with proper defensive positions. They're being sloppy, Maya observed. Look at those gaps in their formation. A properly trained fleet would never leave themselves that exposed. That's because they think there's nothing here that can hurt them, Jake replied. They've gotten lazy from centuries of easy victories. That's going to cost them. He activated his communication system, connecting to the other 49 orbital platforms. All Sentinel stations, this is Sentinel 7. Stand by for Admiral Turner's signal. When it comes, fire everything you have. Make every shot count. This is going to be over fast one way or another. The Valdran fleet continued its advance. 500 attack fighters launched from the main carriers, screaming toward Earth at high speed. They expected to brush aside any resistance and begin bombing population centers within hours. Commander Krell watched the tactical display with satisfaction. His fighters were in position. His main battle group was ready to provide support. In a few more minutes, he would order the final attack. Then Earth would fall like all the others. He never got the chance to give that order. Admiral Frank Turner looked at the tactical display one last time. The Valdran fleet was exactly where he wanted them. Close enough to be in range of Earth's weapons, too close to escape quickly, perfectly positioned for what was about to happen. He took a deep breath and spoke 2 words that would change human history forever. Weapons free. Across the solar system, weapons that had been hidden for decades suddenly came to life. Laser arrays that could burn through starship hulls powered up. Railguns that could accelerate projectiles to a fraction of light speed aligned their targets. Missile batteries loaded with warheads designed specifically to crack Valdran shields armed themselves and prepared to fire. The Valdrans had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest. They were. The moment Admiral Turner gave the order, space around Earth erupted with light and violence. Hundreds of laser beams lanced out from the orbital platforms. The coherent light crossed the distance between Earth and the Valdran fleet in less than a second. The aliens had shields, but those shields had been designed to stop the weapons they usually faced. They had never encountered laser arrays with this much concentrated power. The first wave of Valdrin fighters simply vanished. One moment they were racing toward Earth, confident in their superiority. The next moment, 50 craft were reduced to expanding clouds of superheated gas. The pilots didn't even have time to realize they were under attack before they died. Captain Jake Morrison watched the tactical display as his platform's main laser array fired again and again. Each shot was precisely calculated by the station's computer systems. The artificial intelligence tracked multiple targets simultaneously, predicting their movements and adjusting aim in microseconds. "Target destroyed," Maya reported, her voice shaking slightly with adrenaline. "Acquiring next target, firing another hit." "They're not evading. I don't think they understand what's happening." Jake understood exactly what was happening. The Valdrins had never faced weapons like these. Their experience was with other alien races who used similar technology to their own. Plasma cannons, particle beams, energy torpedoes, all things that their shields could handle. But humanity had gone in a different direction. Humans had focused on old-fashioned physics, lasers that delivered massive amounts of energy to a single point, railguns that threw solid projectiles at incredible speeds, missiles that didn't rely on fancy energy fields, just simple kinetic force. The Valdrins' advanced shields were nearly useless against these attacks. Colonel Beth Palmer stood in the command center of Armstrong Station, watching as her railguns opened fire. The weapons were electromagnetic accelerators buried deep in the lunar rock. They used powerful magnets to accelerate tungsten projectiles down long barrels. By the time the projectiles left the barrels, they were traveling at nearly 10% of light speed. At that velocity, the tungsten rods didn't need explosives. The kinetic energy alone was devastating. When a projectile hit a Valdrin ship, it punched straight through the hull like a bullet through paper. The impact released so much energy that the ship often simply came apart, torn to pieces by the force. "Railgun Battery 1 firing," reported her weapons officer. "Hit confirmed on target Delta 7. Target is breaking up. Battery 2 firing. Hit confirmed on target Delta 9. Target destroyed." Beth watched the display as red icons representing enemy ships began disappearing. Her station alone had 12 railgun batteries. Each battery had 4 guns. Each gun could fire once every 3 seconds. The math was simple and brutal. Every 3 seconds, 48 tungsten projectiles were launched at the Valdrin fleet. The aliens didn't stand a chance. Commander Krell stared at his tactical display in growing horror. In the first 5 minutes of combat, he had lost over 100 fighters and 3 cruisers. His shields were failing across the entire fleet. Ships were reporting damage from weapons they couldn't even see coming. "What is happening?" he roared at his tactical officer. "Where are these attacks coming from?" The tactical officer's 4 hands moved frantically across his control panel. "The platforms around their planet are firing energy beams of some kind, much more powerful than our intelligence suggested. And there are projectile weapons firing from their moon, solid mass drivers moving at relativistic speeds. Our shields can't stop them." Krell felt a cold fear settle in his chest. This was wrong. This wasn't how the conquest was supposed to go. These primitives weren't supposed to have weapons like this. They weren't supposed to fight back at all. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "Scatter formation and return fire. Destroy those platforms." The Valdrin fleet tried to respond, but their movements were clumsy and uncoordinated. They had grown lazy from centuries of easy victories. Their pilots had never faced serious opposition. Now they were panicking, and panic made them sloppy. Colonel Ryan Hayes led Eagle Squadron out of the Defiance's launch bay at full acceleration. His fighter was small compared to the massive Valdrin ships, barely larger than a bus. But it was fast and maneuverable in ways the alien craft couldn't match. "All wings, spread out and engage at will," Ryan transmitted to his squadron. "Remember, hit and run. Don't get caught in a direct fight. Use the debris field for cover." The 50 human fighters dove into the chaos of the battle like sharks into a feeding frenzy. They were outnumbered, but they had advantages the Valdrins didn't expect. Their ships were powered by fusion drives that could accelerate harder and longer than the alien craft. Their weapons were simple but effective, and most importantly, their pilots were highly trained and motivated. Lieutenant Chris Baker locked onto a Valdrin fighter and fired 2 missiles. The weapons were nothing fancy, just conventional warheads with chemical rockets. But they were fast and hard to detect. The Valdrin pilot saw them coming and tried to evade, but he was too slow. Both missiles hit, and the alien fighter exploded in a brief flash of light. "Splash one," Chris called out. "Engaging second target." All around the battlefield, human fighters were proving themselves against the supposedly superior Valdran forces. They worked in pairs, covering each other and coordinating their attacks. When a Valdran ship tried to target one fighter, its partner would swoop in from a different angle and take the shot. Captain Danny Ross flew his fighter through a cloud of debris from a destroyed Valdran cruiser. On the other side, he found himself behind 3 enemy fighters. They hadn't seen him yet. Danny armed 4 missiles and fired them all at once, 2 at each of the outer targets. The missiles hit before the Valdrans even knew they were under attack. 2 alien fighters exploded. The third one finally realized the danger and tried to turn, but Danny was already firing his railgun. The stream of high-velocity projectiles stitched across the fighter's hull, and it began tumbling out of control. 3 more down, Danny reported. "This is like shooting fish in a barrel. They're not even trying to defend themselves properly." But even as the human forces were winning, they were taking losses too. A lucky shot from a Valdran cruiser caught one of the orbital platforms. The laser punched through the station's armor and hit the main reactor. The platform exploded, killing everyone aboard. 53 human lives lost in an instant. Admiral Frank Turner saw the icon for Sentinel-3 disappear from his display. His jaw tightened, but he didn't let emotion cloud his judgment. Losses were expected. The battle was still going overwhelmingly in humanity's favor. "Redirect fire from Sentinel-2 to cover Sentinel-3's sector," he ordered. "Don't let any Valdran ships get through the gap." Commander Lisa Grant was coordinating the overall battle from her station. She watched as the human forces systematically tore apart the Valdran fleet. The aliens were trying to fight back, but their tactics were outdated. They relied on overwhelming firepower and strong shields. When faced with an enemy that attacked differently, they didn't know how to adapt. "Enemy formation is collapsing," Lisa reported. "Their command structure is breaking down. Individual ships are starting to act independently. Some are trying to retreat." Frank nodded. "That's what we want. Keep the pressure on. Don't give them time to regroup or think." On the Valdran flagship, Krell was coming to a terrible realization. He was losing. Badly. His fleet, which had seemed so powerful just an hour ago, was being destroyed by these primitives. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be happening. But it was. "All ships retreat to jump distance," he finally ordered, his voice bitter with defeat. "We need to regroup and call for reinforcements." His tactical officer looked up with wide eyes. "Commander, if we retreat now, the High Council will see it as cowardice. They'll have you executed for losing to primitives." Krell slammed one of his 4 fists on his command chair. "If we stay here, we'll all be dead anyway. At least if we retreat, some of us will survive. Send the order." The remaining Valdran ships tried to break off from the battle and accelerate toward the edge of the solar system. They needed to reach a safe distance from Earth's gravity, well before they could activate their faster-than-light drives. But the humans weren't going to make it easy. Captain Jen Carter commanded the destroyer Relentless, part of the Mars Defense Fleet. Her ship and 49 others had been waiting in cold running mode near Mars, all systems minimized to avoid detection. The Valdrans had no idea they were there. When Admiral Turner gave the signal, Jen's fleet had powered up their drives and begun accelerating toward Earth. It had taken them an hour to reach attack speed, but the timing was perfect. Just as the Valdrans tried to retreat, they found themselves trapped between 2 human forces. "All weapons, full spread," Jen ordered. "Target the cruisers first. Don't let them cover the smaller ships." The Mars fleet opened fire with everything they had. More laser beams crossed space. More railgun projectiles streaked toward their targets. More missiles launched from their pods. The Valdrans, already damaged and demoralized, couldn't handle this second wave of attacks. Commander Krell's flagship took 3 railgun hits in quick succession. The projectiles tore through the ship's main drive section, crippling The message from the Valdran flagship came through on every frequency. Commander Krell's voice, once so confident and mocking, now sounded hollow and defeated. "This is Commander Krell of the Valdran Imperial Fleet. We request immediate ceasefire. We surrender. Please stop shooting. We surrender." Admiral Frank Turner listened to the message repeat 3 times before he responded. Around him in the command center, his staff waited for orders. Some looked satisfied. Others looked angry. Many of the younger officers wanted to keep fighting. to destroy every last Valdrin ship in revenge for the orbital platform they had lost. But Frank knew that revenge was a luxury they couldn't afford. This battle was about more than just defeating one fleet. It was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. That message needed to be carefully crafted. All Earth forces cease fire, Frank ordered. His voice was calm and authoritative. I repeat, cease fire. Do not engage unless fired upon. Across the battlefield, human weapons fell silent. The sudden quiet was almost eerie after the chaos of combat. Laser arrays powered down. Railguns stopped firing. Fighters pulled back to defensive positions. But every weapon stayed armed and ready, just in case this was a trick. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of Sentinel-7 and watched as the Valdrin ships drifted in space. Many were trailing debris in atmosphere. Some were clearly dead in space, their reactors shut down or destroyed. Others were still maneuvering, but slowly and carefully, trying not to appear threatening. Keep targeting solutions on all enemy vessels, Jake ordered Maya. If any of them so much as looks at us wrong, I want to be able to take them out immediately. Maya nodded, her hands moving across her control panel. All targets locked and tracked. We're ready if they try anything. Jake doubted they would. He had seen enough of the Valdrin tactics to understand their mentality. They were bullies who picked on weaker opponents. When someone finally stood up to them, they folded. It was a pattern that probably repeated across their entire empire. Commander Lisa Grant opened a direct channel to the Valdrin flagship. Valdrin Commander, this is Commander Grant of Earth Defense Forces. Your surrender is acknowledged. Here are your instructions. Power down all weapon systems immediately. Deactivate your shields. Prepare to be boarded for inspection. Any ship that attempts to charge weapons or activate faster than light drive will be destroyed without warning. Do you understand? There was a long pause before Krell responded. We understand. We will comply. I request permission to tend to our wounded. Many of my people are injured and dying. Lisa looked at Admiral Turner, who nodded. Permission granted, Lisa said. You may provide medical care to your crew, but your weapons stay offline. Our ships will be watching. One wrong move and we will finish what we started. Krell's response was barely a whisper. There will be no wrong moves. You have won. We acknowledge your victory. Colonel Ryan Hayes brought his fighter back to the Defiance and landed in the carrier's bay. As soon as the canopy opened, he climbed out and pulled off his helmet. His flight suit was soaked with sweat. His hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline crash that came after combat. The deck crew rushed over to check his fighter for damage. Ryan waved them off and headed for the debriefing room. Around him, other pilots were landing. Some were cheering and celebrating. Others looked shell-shocked. A few landing pads remained empty, representing the pilots who wouldn't be coming back. In the debriefing room, Ryan counted heads. Out of 50 fighters that had launched, 43 had returned. 7 pilots lost. 7 friends who would never see their families again. The victory felt hollow when he thought about that cost. Listen up, Ryan said to his surviving pilots. You all did incredible work out there. The enemy had us outnumbered 10-1 and we still beat them. Be proud of what you accomplished today, but don't forget the people we lost. They gave everything to protect Earth, and we owe it to them to make sure their sacrifice mattered. The pilots nodded solemnly. The celebration died down, replaced by a more somber mood. They had won, but war was never something to celebrate. Captain Danny Ross sat in his fighter and watched through the canopy as Earth forces began moving captured Valdrin ships into secure positions. Destroyers from the Mars fleet were using tractor beams to pull crippled enemy vessels away from the main battlefield. Boarding parties were preparing to inspect each ship and secure any remaining weapons. Danny thought about the alien pilots he had killed today. They were people too, in their own way. They had families waiting for them back on their homeworlds. They had hopes and dreams and fears just like humans, but they had come to Earth intending to conquer and enslave humanity. They had left him no choice. War was ugly. There were no real winners, just survivors. Danny was glad to be among the survivors, but he took no pleasure in the killing. He had done what was necessary to protect his home. Nothing more, nothing less. Colonel Beth Palmer walked through Armstrong Station's corridors checking on her crew. The railgun batteries had performed flawlessly, firing thousands of rounds without a single malfunction. Her people had done excellent work, and she made sure to tell each of them personally. How many confirmed kills? Beth asked her tactical officer. Station records show 117 direct hits on enemy vessels. Estimated 88 kills, with the rest being critical damage. We lost 0 personnel and sustained minimal damage to the railgun systems. Overall, I'd call it a complete success, Beth nodded. The numbers were good, but she couldn't help thinking about the Valdren crews aboard those 88 ships. Thousands of aliens had died today. They were the enemy, but they were still living beings. The weight of those deaths would stay with her for a long time. On the Valdren flagship, Commander Krell sat in his damaged command center and tried to come to terms with what had happened. His entire career had been built on military conquest. He had led successful invasions of 37 different worlds. He had been decorated by the High Council 3 times for his tactical brilliance. And now he had been utterly defeated by a species that wasn't even supposed to have real military forces. A human boarding party arrived at his ship within the hour. Krell watched on internal cameras as armed soldiers in powered armor moved through his corridors. They were professional and efficient, checking each section and securing any weapons they found. They didn't hurt any of his crew unless someone was foolish enough to resist. The boarding party commander eventually reached the bridge. She was a human female, tall and athletic, wearing combat armor and carrying a large rifle. Her name tag read Palmer. "Commander Krell?" she asked, her voice amplified by her helmet speakers. Krell stood slowly, making sure to keep all 4 of his hands visible. "I am Krell. Are you here to execute me?" The human removed her helmet, revealing a hard face with short dark hair. "No. We're here to inspect your ship and make sure you're not hiding any active weapons. If you cooperate, nobody gets hurt. If you resist, we will use force." "Your choice," Krell nodded. "We will cooperate. My crew has been ordered to offer no resistance. We have already lost. There is no point in dying needlessly." Palmer studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Smart choice. Stay here and don't interfere while my team sweeps the ship. When we're done, you'll be allowed to make repairs and care for your wounded." Over the next several hours, human forces inspected every Valdren ship that had survived the battle. They cataloged weapons, disabled faster-than-light drives, and provided medical supplies to help treat the wounded. The aliens were treated firmly but fairly, something that seemed to confuse many of them. Captain Jen Carter oversaw the inspection of a Valdren cruiser from her position aboard the Relentless. Her team was finding that the alien technology was actually quite impressive, just not suited for fighting against Earth's weapons. "These ships are built tough," her chief engineer reported. "Their hulls are thick and their redundant systems are well designed. Against energy weapons, they'd be almost invincible. But against kinetic weapons like our railguns, all that heavy armor just makes them easier targets." Jen nodded. Different civilizations develop different technologies based on what they encounter. The Valdrens probably conquered hundreds of species that all used similar weapons. They never had to adapt to something completely different until they met us. "Lucky for us, they picked Earth to invade," the engineer said. "If they had been more careful, done better intelligence gathering, they might have realized we were dangerous." "Lucky for us," Jen agreed. "But also smart planning by our military leadership. We deliberately made ourselves look weak to anyone watching from space. We hid our best weapons and kept our true capabilities secret. When they finally came, they walked right into our trap." Admiral Frank Turner prepared to address the people of Earth. The battle had lasted less than 2 hours, but its effects would last for generations. Humanity had proven itself capable of defending against a major alien invasion. That changed everything. The broadcast went out on every channel, reaching billions of people around the world. Frank stood in front of cameras, still wearing his uniform, looking tired but satisfied. "People of Earth," he began. "Today we faced a threat unlike any inhuman." 3 days after the battle, Admiral Frank Turner stood in one of Armstrong Station's observation rooms, looking out at the captured Valdren fleet. The alien ships hung in space like broken toys, surrounded by human patrol vessels. Engineers were still assessing the damage and helping with repairs, but under careful guard. Commander Lisa Grant entered the room carrying a data pad. She looked exhausted. None of them had slept much since the battle ended. "We finished interrogating the Valdren officers," Lisa said. "You're going to want to hear what they told us." Frank turned from the window. "Go ahead." Lisa activated the data pad, showing star charts and tactical information. "The Valdren Empire is bigger than we thought. They control over 400 worlds across 43 star systems. Their total military strength is approximately 20,000 warships, This fleet we defeated was just a small expeditionary force. Frank felt his stomach tighten. 20,000 ships. And we struggled with 600. We didn't struggle, Lisa corrected. We dominated them. But you're right that the numbers are concerning. If they send their full military against us, we'd be overwhelmed through sheer numbers alone. What else did you learn? Lisa swiped through more files. The galaxy is a lot more crowded than we realized. There are hundreds of spacefaring civilizations, maybe thousands. Most of them are aggressive expansionists like the Valdrins. They fight each other constantly over territory and resources. It's basically one big war zone out there. She pulled up another chart. The Valdrins have been watching Earth for about 20 years. They saw our radio broadcasts and identified us as a primitive species worth conquering. They thought we'd be easy slaves because we seemed technologically backward. They made assumptions based on incomplete information, Frank said. A mistake we made sure they'd make. What about their government? How will they react to losing this fleet? Lisa looked uncomfortable. That's the complicated part. Commander Krell says the Valdrin High Council will see this defeat as an insult that must be avenged. Their culture is built around military dominance. Losing to a species they considered primitive will be seen as humiliating. They might send an even larger force. Frank walked back to the window and stared at the damaged alien ships. Then we need to make sure they understand the cost of that decision. What's Krell's status? His flagship is repaired enough to fly. Most of the other surviving ships are also spaceworthy now. They're ready to leave whenever you give the order. Good, Frank said. I want to send them home with a message. A very clear message. The next day, Commander Krell was brought to Armstrong Station to meet with Admiral Turner face to face. It was the first time the two commanders had been in the same room. Krell was large and imposing, but he carried himself with the defeated posture of someone who had lost everything. They met in a conference room with guards stationed at every entrance. Frank sat on one side of the table. Krell sat on the other, his forearms folded in a gesture that seemed to indicate submission in his culture. You wanted to speak with me, Krell said. His voice was translated by a computer, turning his native language into English. I did, Frank replied. You're going home, Commander. We're releasing your fleet. You'll be given enough fuel and supplies to reach Valdrin space. Your wounded will be treated and sent with you. We're even providing spare parts to help repair your ships during the journey. Krell looked confused.
Why, we came here to conquer your world.
We would have enslaved your people. Why show us mercy? Frank leaned forward. Because we're not like you. We don't conquer for the sake of conquest. We defend ourselves when attacked, but we don't seek revenge beyond what's necessary. You're being released because you surrendered. That surrender saved thousands of lives on both sides. My High Council will not see it that way, Krell said bitterly. They will see my defeat as weakness. They will probably execute me for failing. Perhaps, Frank agreed. But they might also listen to what you tell them. You're going to carry a message back to your empire. A message from humanity to the Valdrin High Council. Krell straightened slightly. What message? Frank activated a holographic display, showing the destroyed and damaged Valdrin ships. Tell them exactly what happened here. Don't minimize it. Don't try to make excuses. Tell them that you came to Earth with 600 ships and left with fewer than 200. Tell them that we destroyed your fleet in less than 2 hours. He changed the display to show Earth's defenses. Tell them about our weapons. Tell them about the railguns that punch through your shields like they're not even there. Tell them about the lasers that can burn through your hulls in seconds. Tell them about the fighters that are faster and more maneuverable than anything you've ever faced. Krell watched the images with growing unease. Most importantly, Frank continued, tell them that we warned you. We gave you a chance to leave peacefully and you laughed at us. You thought we were weak. You thought we were primitives who couldn't fight back. Tell them how wrong you were. They will not believe me, Krell said. Or they will think I'm a coward making excuses. That's why we're sending proof. Frank activated another file, and a data crystal materialized on the table between them. This contains complete sensor recordings of the battle from multiple angles. Video, audio, tactical data, everything. Your High Council will be able to see exactly what happened. They can analyze our weapons and tactics. They can count the ships you lost. Krell stared at the crystal. You're giving us intelligence on your capabilities? That makes no sense. With this information, we could plan a better attack. Yes, you could, Frank agreed. But that's the point. We want you to understand what you'd be facing. We want your High Council to look at this data and realize that attacking Earth again would be costly. Very costly. Even if you win eventually, you'd lose thousands of ships and tens of thousands of soldiers. Is Earth really worth that price? He stood up and walked around the table, standing beside Krell. We gave you one warning, Commander. You didn't listen. Now we're giving your empire a second warning. Leave Earth alone. Don't come back. Because if you do, we'll be ready, and next time we won't be so merciful. Krell picked up the data crystal with one of his 4 hands. I will deliver your message. I cannot promise the High Council will listen. Then their blood will be on their own hands, Frank said. You're free to go, Commander. Take your fleet and leave our system. If we ever see Valdrin ships near Earth again, we'll consider it an act of war. Captain Jake Morrison watched from Sentinel-7 as the Valdrin fleet limped away from Earth. The alien ships moved slowly, many of them still showing visible damage. It would take them weeks to reach the edge of the solar system, where they could safely activate their faster-than-light drives. Think they'll come back? Maya asked. Jake shrugged. Depends on how smart their leaders are. If they're smart, they'll realize Earth isn't worth the trouble. If they're proud and stupid, they'll want revenge. Which do you think they are? Probably proud and stupid, Jake admitted. Most military empires are. They build their whole identity around being strong and conquering others. Admitting that some primitive species defeated them goes against everything they believe. Maya looked worried. So we'll have to fight them again? Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe they'll surprise us and be smart about it. Either way, we'll be ready. That's all we can do. Colonel Beth Palmer was having a similar conversation on the moon. Her crew had performed brilliantly during the battle, and now they were working to improve the railgun systems even further. Every lesson learned from the fight was being analyzed and incorporated into new tactics. We got lucky, Beth told her chief engineer. The Valdrins didn't know what they were facing. Next time, whoever attacks us will be prepared for our weapons. We need to stay ahead of them. Already working on it, the engineer replied. We're developing new projectile types that can defeat improved shields. We're also working on increasing the rate of fire and adding more batteries. By the time anyone attacks again, we'll be twice as dangerous as we are now. Beth nodded approvingly. Good, because this won't be the last invasion attempt. We proved that Earth is a threat to the established order. Other empires will want to eliminate us before we become too powerful. She looked out at the stars through the station's observation window. We started a war today, whether we meant to or not. The galaxy knows about us now. Some will want to be our friends. Others will want to destroy us. We need to be ready for both. Captain Jen Carter was dealing with a different problem aboard the Relentless. Her ship had captured several Valdrin crew members during the boarding operations, and now those prisoners needed to be processed and eventually returned to their people. One of the prisoners, a young Valdrin soldier, had asked to speak with her. Jen agreed, curious about what he wanted to say. The alien was smaller than Commander Krell, probably equivalent to a teenager in human years. He stood in the brig cell, all 4 hands pressed against the force field that confined him. You are the captain? He asked through the translator. I am, Jen confirmed. What did you want to talk about? I wanted to say thank you, the young Valdrin said. You could have killed all of us. We came here as invaders. We intended to hurt your people, but 6 weeks had passed since the Valdrin fleet limped away from Earth. The damaged alien ships had finally reached the edge of the solar system and jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying Commander Krell and his warning back to the Valdrin Empire. Now Earth waited to see what would happen next. Admiral Frank Turner sat in a meeting with representatives from every nation on Earth. The old political divisions still existed, but the alien invasion had forced humanity to work together in ways they never had before. The Planetary Defense Force was truly unified now, with soldiers and equipment from every country contributing to the common cause. Long-range sensors have detected multiple, faster-than-light signatures at the edge of our detection range, reported Commander Lisa Grant. She stood at the front of the room, displaying data on a large screen. We count at least 50 different vessels, all holding position about 2 light-years away. They're not approaching, just watching. Who are they? Asked one of the diplomats. More Valdrins? We don't think so, Lisa replied. The energy signatures are different from Valdrin ships. We're detecting at least 5 distinct types of vessels, probably representing 5 different civilizations. They're all just sitting there observing us. Frank stood and addressed the room. The Valdrins spread the word about what happened here. Other alien species know that Earth defeated a major invasion force. Some of them are curious. Some are probably worried, and some might be planning their own attacks. So what do we do? Another diplomat asked. Do we try to make contact with them? We already are, Frank said. We've been broadcasting messages in multiple languages, both human and alien. We're telling them the same thing we told the Valdrons. Earth is willing to be peaceful neighbors with anyone who approaches us peacefully, but we will defend ourselves against aggression. So far, none of the watching ships have responded. Captain, Jake Morrison had been dealing with a different problem on Sentinel-7, his orbital platform, was one of the stations closest to where some of the alien observers had been detected. Every day, his crew watched the sensors nervously, wondering if today would be the day another invasion force appeared. I don't like this, Maya said, staring at her display. They're just sitting out there watching us. What are they waiting for? They're trying to figure us out, Jake explained. They saw what happened to the Valdrons. Now they're trying to decide if we're a threat or an opportunity. Some of them might want to be our friends. Others might be planning how to attack us more effectively than the Valdrons did. How do we know which is which? We don't, Jake admitted. That's what makes this so dangerous. We have to be ready for anything. The situation changed dramatically 3 days later, when one of the watching ships finally made contact. The vessel approached Earth slowly, broadcasting peaceful intentions on multiple frequencies. It was smaller than a Valdron warship, sleek and elegant in design. Commander Lisa Grant was the first to receive the translated message. The aliens called themselves the Kentari, and they claimed to represent a federation of peaceful species. They wanted to talk. It could be a trap, warned Colonel Ryan Hayes during the strategy meeting. They approach peacefully, get close, then attack when we're not ready. It could be, Frank agreed. But it could also be genuine. We need allies out here. We can't fight the entire galaxy alone. I'm willing to take the risk. Under controlled conditions, Lisa added, we invite them to send a small delegation to a neutral location. We meet them there with overwhelming force nearby, just in case. If they truly want peace, they won't object to reasonable security precautions. The Kentari agreed to Earth's terms. 3 days later, a small Kentari shuttle approached Mars, where a meeting had been arranged at one of the human research stations. Admiral Turner, Commander Grant, and a full security detail waited to greet the aliens. Captain Jen Carter commanded the security fleet that surrounded the station. 20 warships held position at various distances, all weapons ready but not targeting the Kentari shuttle. It was a delicate balance between showing strength and not appearing overly aggressive. The Kentari who emerged from the shuttle were surprisingly small, barely 4 feet tall with blue-gray skin and large eyes. They moved gracefully despite the lower gravity of Mars. Their leader introduced herself as Ambassador Kellis. We come in peace, Kellis said through her translator device. Her voice was melodic and pleasant. My government has been watching your world for many years. We wanted to make contact long ago, but we feared it would draw the attention of hostile empires like the Valdrons. Now that attention has been drawn anyway, we felt it was safe to reveal ourselves. Frank studied the small alien carefully. Why didn't you help us when the Valdrons attacked? Kellis looked uncomfortable. Because we could not. The Kentari Federation is a peaceful alliance, but we are not militarily strong. We have defensive capabilities, but we cannot match the great empires in open combat. If we had intervened, the Valdrons would have simply attacked us as well. We would have both been destroyed. So you hid and watched while we fought alone, Lisa said, her voice cold. We did, Kellis admitted. It was not honorable, but it was practical. However, we did share our knowledge with you indirectly. Many of the scientific discoveries your species made in the past 50 years were influenced by information we carefully leaked to your researchers. We helped you develop the technology you needed to defend yourselves, even if we could not fight beside you. Frank and Lisa exchanged glances. It was impossible to verify that claim immediately, but it did explain some of the rapid technological advances Earth had made in recent decades. What do you want from us now? Frank asked. Friendship, Kellis replied simply, and mutual protection. The Kentari Federation consists of 16 species across 23 worlds. We are all peaceful, focused on science and culture rather than conquest, but we live in constant fear of the aggressive empires that surround us. We survive by being small, quiet, and non-threatening. She gestured toward Earth. But you are different. You are strong. You defeated the Valdrons decisively. If Earth were to join our federation or at least become our ally, It would provide protection that we desperately need. In exchange, we can offer you knowledge, resources, and information about the galaxy. Colonel Beth Palmer listened to the conversation from Armstrong Station via live feed. Her tactical mind was already analyzing the offer. An alliance with peaceful species could provide Earth with valuable intelligence and diplomatic connections. But it would also paint a target on their backs. The aggressive empires would see Earth as a threat if they aligned with the Federation. The negotiations continued for hours. The Kentari shared information about galactic politics, explaining the complex web of alliances and conflicts that existed among the stars. Frank and Lisa learned that the galaxy was essentially divided into 3 groups. First were the aggressive empires like the Valdrins. They believed in conquest and expansion, taking what they wanted by force. There were dozens of these empires, constantly fighting each other over territory. Second were the peaceful federations like the Kentari. They focused on science, trade, and culture, trying to survive in the cracks between the warring empires. They were numerous but weak, relying on diplomacy and hiding to avoid being conquered. Third were the isolationists, species that had retreated into their own systems and cut off contact with the rest of the galaxy, building powerful defenses, but refusing to participate in galactic affairs. They survived by making themselves too expensive to conquer. Where does Earth fit? Frank asked. Kellis considered the question. That is for you to decide. You are strong enough to be an empire if you choose. You could start conquering other worlds, expanding your territory like the Valdrins do. Many species would fear you if you took that path. That's not who we are, Lisa said firmly. Then you could join a federation like ours. Kellis continued. Work together with peaceful species for mutual benefit and protection. This would make you friends but also enemies, as the empires would see you as a threat to their way of life. Or we could become isolationists, Frank said. Defend our own system and ignore everyone else. You could, Kellis agreed. But I think that would be a waste. Your species has much to offer the galaxy, and the galaxy has much to offer you. Isolation would benefit no one. The meeting ended without a final decision. Frank promised to discuss the offer with Earth's governments and respond within a few weeks. The Kentari departed peacefully and the human forces relaxed slightly. Back on Earth, the debate raged for days. Some politicians wanted to join the Kentari Federation immediately, seeing it as a path to peace and prosperity. Others wanted to remain independent, relying only on Earth's own strength. Still others wanted to strike first, attacking the aggressive empires before they could organize a proper response to Earth's emergence. Admiral Frank Turner presented his recommendation to the World Council. We should accept the Kentari offer, but on our own terms. We don't join their federation as subordinates. We form an alliance as equals. We share technology and intelligence, we coordinate defenses, but we maintain our independence. Earth remains sovereign. What about the aggressive empires? Asked one of the council members. If we ally with the Kentari, they'll see us as enemies.